Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is Muhammad Adam Haikal bin Muhammad Amir Bakhtiar. Today I will present about our assignment for the RES619 revenue laws for our groups. For the task 1, which is local government law in Malaysia. Okay, first I will start with the introduction of Atin Harapan Commission report. The Atin Harapan Royal Commission ANRC is a government body established to oversee and reform all systems in West Malaysia. Tan Sri Atin Harapan, who died in 1976, inspired the name ANRC. In addition, Tan Sri Atin Harapan was known for his report, the Atin Harapan Royal Commission of Inquiry report, in which he called for the restoration of local government elections. The ANRC was established in 1965 in his name and was completed in 1968. The main objective of the Atin Harapan Royal Commission is to assess the progress of the local government to achieve its goal. The second objective is to make recommendation requirement of the law for local government. There were some recommendation from Atin Harapan. First is each region of each state in the union should have its own local government. The owners of each home must contribute a small amount to the local government of their country. In order to assess their right and enforce the law, there must be adequate laws. The report suggests that legislation should be passed to repeal the Local Government Act and replace it with a new law. The independence and decentralization of local governments without the intervention of state authorities. The Secretary of the local government is both the executive director and the senior administrator of the organization, which is the district official or DO still hold this position at the local level. And finally, a state commission was recommended for each state in the report. NRC main proposal was submitted to the government at the time. The first, every corner of each state in the country should have its own local government. Second, decentralize and delegate autonomy to local governments and not be governed by state authorities. Third, the Secretary of the local government must be the main administrator and chief executive officer of the local government. Next is the local government should establish a public complaints body, which is now called Office of Public Complaints or Biro Pengaduan Awam. And finally, the Board of Directors of local governments. Okay, next I'm going to about the history of formation of Kuala Lumpur City Hall. Okay, its background is Kuala Lumpur is known as the capital of Malaysia. The local government in the Kuala Lumpur area is the Kuala Lumpur City Hall. It was established in 1890. The name of the local government was called Lembaga Sanitary Kuala Lumpur, and this was the first local government established in our country. On March 15, 1948, Lembaga Perbandaran Kuala Lumpur was established after gaining bandar status as it is the capital of Malaysia, and in 1951 it changed to Majlis Perbandaran Kuala Lumpur after an election was made. To implement Federal Capital Law 1960, management of Kuala Lumpur was transferred from the state government to the federal government. The name of the local government changed to Kuala Lumpur City Hall in 1972 after the status of bandar changed to Bandaraya. Next is the formulation of Kuala Lumpur City Hall in relation to Atin Harapan Commission report. First is the establishing of a local government in a certain area. Kuala Lumpur City Hall was established in 1890 and its main function is to administer its jurisdiction. In the past, Kuala Lumpur was the capital of Malaysia and the capital of the state of Selangor. This shows that the area of authority of this local government is larger than in the past. In 1960, the management of the Kuala Lumpur area was transferred to the federal government. Nowadays, Kuala Lumpur City Hall is the local government that runs and manages areas of Kuala Lumpur only. This is related to the recommendation in the Atin Harapan Commission report, as it recommends that every square centimeter of the country should be managed by local governments in order to reduce pressure on the central government to manage the area of the country. Next is the second is the law application. The implementation of the law varies from place to place. Kuala Lumpur City Hall has also used different methods in implementing policies and laws depending on the suitability for the administrative region. However, the federal and state government still oversee the implementation of local laws and policies, and in Malaysia, the law is bound by the federal constitution. This is also related to the recommendation in the report of the committee that proposed to decentralize financial and administrative autonomy, but still be under the control of the state government. Next is the establishment of a court of public complaints. Kuala Lumpur City Hall also managed to create a public complaint office. This office was established to ensure that all complaints from the public are heard by the City Council. The City Council has established ADU RKL as the basis for all complaints and responses from the City Council. This relates to the recommendation in the Commission report that a local government court should be established as part of a public complaint agreement. Next is the similarity of Atin Hamban Commission report and local authority. The main purpose of the Atin Hamban Royal Commission report was to examine the shortcoming of the local government and attempt to correct the then inadequate system. The report of the Royal Commission Atin Hamban made 5 main suggestions regarding the reorganization of local government. First, local government must be present in every part of the country. And it will manage all administrative tasks. Next is local government should be decentralized and consist of fully elected members with complete financial and administrative autonomy under the supervision of state agencies. The chief executive officer and administrator of the local government should be the secretary. A management board must be part of the local government, and its agency committees will make the decision and consider it as part of the board responsibilities. And lastly, the local government court is the body of last resort and is established to deal with complaints from the public. Okay, next I will continue about the origins of local authority elections. Local government elections were first held at the Georgetown Municipal Council in 1956, and the last time it was held was in 1963. According to the Atin Hamban report, elections of local government which were usually held in 1965 and 1966 respectively, and yet were not held due to the outbreak of open conflict between Indonesia and Malaysia near the end of 1964. On September 3, 1964, a proclamation of emergency was issued across the country, establishing 2 rules and regulations under the Emergency Necessary Powers Act 1964, namely an Emergency Suspension Local Government Elections Regulations 1965 and the Emergency Suspension Local Government Election Amendment Regulations 1965. This regulation has suspended all elections for local government during the emergency situations. From another perspective, this election system was abolished in order to accelerate Malaysia development. Next, there was also a suggestion to rerun local authority elections in 2006, but there were various speculations among ministers who reject this implementation because some believe that election at this level had racist elements and could lead to racial inequality. According to Dr. Mahathir, there are risks in the election implementation, one of which is the possibility of a split between urban and rural areas within the country, which will break the relationship between urban and rural areas because the focus is only on the local level in each state. However, Atin Hamban opinions that participation from choices made by individuals themselves is better in the long run by taking into consideration and adapting to a country's inherent weaknesses, reinforce the importance of holding elections at this level. That's all from me.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is Muhammad Goyum, and today I'm going to present about my part of the Atin Hamban report. For the first slide, do's and don'ts of local authority selection. All voting related laws are based on the recommendation made in the report of the Royal Commission of Inquiry into the working of local authorities in West Malaysia. For the do's during election, the candidates can represent a party politics. Politics candidate can run as independents or represent political parties. Party candidates have advantages over independents, including the ability to make decisions collectively, while independents rely solely on individual perspective. Next is the councillor has the right to keep the seat he earned even if he leaves his original political party. Councillors can be independent of any political party if an independent candidate later joins a party after winning. And the assets should still be preserved. Councillors' primary duty is to serve the public's interest, and elections for this position are personal rather than party-based. Okay, for the next slide is the don'ts during election. The first don't not do during election is to develop code of conduct during election. Candidates can campaign openly, presenting their platform as to be selected as their victor. They should also avoid inappropriate subjects like national politics and stick to relevant local government issues while respecting constitutional limitations. Second is the no one candidate can stand in more than one ward. During 1960, ward-based election divided regions into specific wards. Candidates represented individual wards, allowing them to focus only the needs of their specific areas. The system empowered regional minorities and fostered closer relationship between voters and councillors. Okay, for the next slide is the reasons on the abolition of local government election in Malaysia. Local government election in Malaysia, which allows citizens to participate in local democracy, were abolished in 1964 as per Section 15 of the Local Government Act 1976. This resolution seeks to explore the reasons behind the decision to abolish this election, which involve voting for mayors and other officials in City Hall or Municipal Council alongside representatives at the State Assembly and Parliament. Okay, for the first reason for abolition of local government election in Malaysia is to avoid racial divisions. Racial divisions is local government election could worsen existing racial tension and division in society. Next is the urban versus town areas. Election outcomes based on racial preference may deepen the divide between urban and town areas. Next is the ethnic concentration. Certain areas have predominant racial group leading to potential voting pattern based on ethnicity. The next is the national unity. The abolition of local government election aims to prevent further division and promote a sense of Malaysian identity. And lastly, the challenge for unity. Racially driven election outcomes hinder the efforts to foster national unity. Okay, the second reason is there's too many people's representatives. For the existing representation, citizens are already represented through parliamentary and state assembly elections. Next is the average ratio of elected to voter is sufficient. And next is the introducing local government election would create redundancies in representation. Next is the local government election may reduce the influence of state assembly members and the state government. Lastly, maintaining the current system avoid diluting the role of existing elected representative. Okay, for the last reason of abolition of local government election is the waste of money. Political parties in Malaysia engage in intense election campaign to gain voter confidence. This campaign usually involves significant spending, which is funded by tax dollars. Expenditure includes renting campaign spaces, creating promotional materials, and utilizing government resources. Some parties may take advantage of the government machinery, facilities, and media to gain an advantage towards the other parties. This utilization of resources can lead to losses for the public, to the general public. And conducting local government election through the Election Commission of Malaysia incurs significant costs. And lastly, given the current economic climate, it is important to consider alternative use for tax dollars that benefit the entire population than spending it on campaigning for election. Okay, for the conclusion, the 1800 Commission report studied the Malaysian administrative system focusing on local government. Some recommendations were implemented, such as establish local authorities and using management boards and tribunals. Local government elections were initially held but later halted due to conflicts. The suggestion to reinstate them was rejected by the government to avoid tension and inefficiencies. Nevertheless, the report still influenced Malaysian local government structure and can guide future administrative system. Okay, that's all from me. Thank you.
Assalamualaikum, my name is Nick Ishraf Ali bin Hazin and I will present about stamp duty court case which is Tay Yon Chai versus Chong Jin Kok. First of all, I will explain about the background of the case, which is the plaintiff for this case is Tay Yon Chai and the defendant is Chong Jin Kok. Plaintiff will lend defendant various sum of money to help him when he had financial problem. The defendant had made occasional payment and voluntarily executed a promissory note in favor of the plaintiff. In 2010, after going into default, according to the promissory note, the defendant owes him 150,000 ringgit, which had to be paid off within 3 months. Defendant also stated that he would permit the plaintiff to transfer to himself 1% interest in each of 2 land parcels. The case actually because the defendant failed to satisfy the promissory note and the plaintiff is now requesting a declaration that he is the owner of the 1% share in 2 land parcels. The section and regulation related in this case is Stamp Act 1949. First is a promissory note is not admissible in evidence. The reason is section 41 stated tax chargeable documents like promissory note must be stamped either before or during execution. Then section 52 further clarifies that a duty chargeable document must be correctly stamped to be admissible in court, with exception only if the court seizes and admits it upon payment of a fine. Lastly, although section 47 allows some instruments to be stamped after execution within a specific time frame, this provision does not apply to checks and promissory notes, making the promissory note in question ineligible for late stamping and hence inadmissible in the evidence. Next is judge decision. Judge rejected the evidence of the plaintiff that the defendant had admitted owing 150,000 ringgit and had pledged his share in the said properties. This is because there is not a shred of evidence to support the assertion plaintiff that the defendant owe him 150,000 ringgit. Judge also dismissed the claim by plaintiff. The reason is plaintiff can be defined as illegal moneylender as he did not obtain any license regarding moneylending business. Judge also dismissed the counterclaim made by the defendant due to the fact that the borrower who knowingly engaged in an illegal moneylending transaction to request a refund of the interest that he already paid. Lastly is about relevance to the scope of charge. First, judge agreed promissory notes are excluded from this provision as checks and promissory notes cannot be stamped after they are signed, unlike other types of instruments, meaning the evidence unacceptable in plaintiff claims. Judge interpretation on the Moneylenders Act 1951 plays a significant role as Section 2 of Moneylenders Act 1951 defines moneylender, and this means plaintiff is illegal moneylender as he did not state that he is worked as moneylender and he also did not obtain the license. Lastly, defendant's loan agreement was illegal as he willingly entered into an illegal moneylending transaction. An illegal moneylending transaction should not be permitted to demand for refund of the interest. That's all from me. Thank you.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. I'm going to present information regarding the real property gain tax court case between Kayusa Sdn Bhd and the Director General of Inland Revenue DGIR. In this case, the taxpayer Kayusa Sdn Bhd sold a condominium unit for 398,000 ringgit, which was the same as the purchase price. However, the DGIR assessed the gain from the sale based on the market value determined by the Jabatan Penilaian dan Perkhidmatan Harta JPPH. The main issue on this case was the Section 25, Subsection 2 of the Real Property Gain Tax Act 1976 is applied, and if connected individuals should be considered under paragraph 23 of Schedule 2 of the RPGTA. The DGIR utilized Section 25, Subsection 2 of the RPGTA, claiming the authority to disregard or modify the transaction due to its impact on the tax liability. The taxpayer could not provide evidence to show that the market value determined by JPH was wrong or too high. It was determined that the sale price did not reflect the market value. The court clarified that the Section 25, Section 2 of the RPGTA could be appealed even if the transaction did not involve connected individuals. The Special Commission of Income Tax and the High Court rejected the taxpayer appeals. The Court of Appeal agreed with the decision of the SCIT and the High Court, finding no legal error. The DGIR had the right to consider the market value of the property, especially considering the 3-year period between acquisition and sales. The burden of proof was on the taxpayer to demonstrate that the market value determined by JPPH was incorrect. Additionally, the taxpayer failed to disclose the existence of a true in the sales, which was not disclosed. Ultimately, the Court of the Appeal dismissed the taxpayer appeals, ordered them to pay the cost of the case. In this court case, there are two important sections of the Real Property Gain Tax Act 1976 involves Section 25, Subsection 2 and Paragraph 23 of Schedule 2. Section 25, Subsection 2 allows the tax authority, DGIR, to modify or disregard the transaction if it has a significant impact on the amount of tax. This provision prevents people from structuring transactions to lead to lower their tax liability. For paragraph 23 of Schedule 2 deals with transactions involving connected individual or entities. When people with close relationship like family member or business partner are involved in a transaction, tax authority examines it more closely to ensure fairness in tax assessment. In this specific court case, the court clarified that Section 25, Subsection 2 of the RPGTA can be applied even if the transaction does not involve connected individuals. So for the decision made by the judge for this court case is the Court of Appeal with all judgment agreement confirmed that the decision of the SCIT and the High Court were legally correct. They found that the DGIR had the right to consider the property market value, especially since it was so within 3 years of acquisition. The taxpayer had the responsibility to prove any error in the market value determined by the GPPH, but they failed to do so. Additionally, the taxpayer did not provide evidence in their own name on 15 May 2040 or disclose any trust agreement related to the sales. Lastly, in the Kayusa Sdn Bhd and DGIR court case, the relevance of the scope of charge is related to the determination of the tax liability under the Real Property Gain Tax Act. The court had to assess whether the transaction between the taxpayer and the buyer was accurately evaluated for tax purpose, particularly in relation to the market value of the property. This assessment was important in determining the correct amount of tax payable by taxpayer and ensuring compliance with the RPGTA. Additionally, the court had to consider any potential differences or perversion in the transaction that could affect the accuracy of the tax liability calculation.
Hi, my name is Siti Hajaranis Kade and I'm going to present the court case of income tax Kanawit Timbers Sdn Bhd versus Ketua Pengarah Hasil Dalam Negeri 2007. For the background of the court case, it involved a logging contractor who entered into an agreement with Alpha Prosper, appointing them as the subcontractor responsible for felling and extracting timber. As part of the agreement, Alpha Prosper paid the logging contractor RM2,120,000 Malaysia for the usage of logging roads and camp facilities. The logging contractor considered this payment as revenue, but the Special Commissioners of Income Tax classified it as a capital receipt. The key issues were whether the payment should be categorized as a capital or revenue and whether it fell under the provision of Section 22, Subsection 2, Paragraph 1 of the Income Tax Act 1967. The court ruled in favor of the Special Commissioners, stating that the payment was capital in nature business because the logging contractor's primary business activity was contracting, not selling camp facilities and trunk roads. Secondly, the sections and regulations related in this court case. The case involved the interpretation and application of key sections and regulations of the Income Tax Act 1967. Section 33 allowed for deductions of expenses incurred by the appellant, while Section 22, Subsection 2, Paragraph 1 determined the classification of income. The regulations regarding the reporting of various incomes were also relevant. The court had to determine the tax liability of the appellant and the nature of the payment received from Alpha Prosper based on these provisions and regulations. Thirdly, the decisions made by the judge. In the case, the judge upheld the Special Commissioner's decision that the payment received by the appellant was capital in nature, considering their primary business as a logging contractor. The judge also agreed that the payment did not fall under the category of income defined by Section 22, Subsection 2, Paragraph 1 of the Income Tax Act 1967. The judge acknowledged the appellant's legitimate deductions under Section 33 for expenses related to the maintenance of logging roads and camp facilities. These decisions were crucial in determining the appellant's tax liability and the nature of the payment from Alpha Prosper. And last but not least, the relevance to the scope of charge. The judge's decisions in the case have significant relevance to the scope of charge and the appellant's tax liability. The judge determined that the payment received from Alpha Prosper was capital in nature, exempting it from income taxation. These decisions established the boundaries of the scope of charge and relieved the appellant from tax liability on the received amount, and the judge's interpretation of Section 22, Subsection 2, Paragraph 1 further solidifies this determination, emphasizing that the payment does not meet the criteria for classification. Emphasizing. And last but not least, the relevance to the scope of charge. The judge's decisions in the case have significant relevance to the scope of charge and the appellant's tax liability. The judge determined that the payment received from Alpha Prosper was capital in nature, exempting it from income taxation. This decision established the boundaries of the scope of charge and relieved the appellant from tax liability on the received amount. The judge's interpretation of Section 22, Subsection 2, Paragraph 1 further solidifies this determination, emphasizing that the payment does not meet the criteria for classification of income. Additionally, the judge's recognition of the deduction claimed by the appellant under Section 33 highlights their relevance in determining the scope of charge and taxable amount. Overall, this decision shaped the appellant's tax liability and the boundaries of income subject to taxation under the Income Tax Act 1967. That's all from me. Thank you.